You're watching StratNewsGlobal. I'm Ramananda Sengupta. We are here at the Raisina Dialogue, and with me is Dr. Seyed Emamian, Assistant Professor at the Tehran Polytechnic University of Technology and co-founder of Governance and Policy, a think tank in Tehran. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate your taking time out.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Sir, I was just thinking that you're here from Iran, and as you know, India and Iran have a long relationship. But what do you think is the state of the relationship now politically?
Actually, I'm here as an independent voice from Tehran, rather than representing any official department.
Of course,
so
yes.
Let's to be frank. I think Iran-India relationship has been good from a political point of view, but I think it should be manifested in trade and economic relationship. With regards to trade and economic relationship, the situation is now very disappointing. Almost the oil import from Iran has come to zero since the last year of the first Trump's administration. And in total, the trade between Iran and UAE and India that has peaked sometimes almost $30 billion, of course, from by mediation of some countries like UAE, now has come down, has fallen sharply. So it's very challenging and very concerning. It shows that whilst in language everything is okay, photo diplomacy is going to go on, and there are a lot of goodwill between amongst the Iranian and Indian policymakers to work together. But this kind of relationship has been very much affected by international and geopolitical factors and dimensions. Let's say what's called U.S. Unilateral coercive measures.
Right.
They call it sanction, but it's not international sanctions. They are unilateral measures. Has affected a lot. Maybe first of all because of the vulnerability of the Iranian resource-based economy,
Right.
and secondly because what I call it India overcompliance with U.S. pressure and they call it sanction. So we need to find some solutions to get out of such kind of the decreasing and dying trade relationship.
Okay.
Whilst in politics and civilizationally, culturally, we are very much close to each other, very much well connected to each other, and no one could think of Iran and India to being separated from each other. But I think, as I said, trade interaction and exchange is very crucial. Also, there are a lot of huge gap, in other words, huge opportunity for more security and defense and military cooperation. During the Raisina Dialogue, we have heard a lot of arguments about traditional India-Russia very close defense and military cooperation, and now U.S. is thinking of the biggest military partner of India, and India is getting. It's very interesting that I heard today from the advisor to the U.S. President, national security advisor to the U.S. President, that India is becoming the largest client or customer of military equipment, American military weapons. So it's very changing the dynamism. So I think there is a huge gap that both countries could work together from a military and security point of view also.
If I can just interrupt for a second, sir. We also imported a lot of oil from Russia, and Russia too had sanctions.
Yeah.
So what stops India from importing oil from Iran? I mean, if you can defy one.
That's a question that you need to answer me, not me. The Indian colleagues should answer all of that. But there is a technical rationale behind that. I have heard the explanations. They said that there was a kind of the deal between maybe between India, Russia, and US, that U.S. put sanction on the cap of the price for Russian oil,
Right.
but behind the price, the cap of price, it was not sanctioned to buy the Russian oil. That was such kind of the technical explanations that our Indian colleagues provided for us. But I think, in my point of view, what is important is the political will behind that. There was a political will from Indians that they went to the DC and they convinced U.S. Policymakers to provide such an opportunity for them, a win-win opportunity to buy Russian oil under the price cap, at the same time to provide the Russian the oil, the processed outputs or outcomes or products from oil, and to export it to the Europe. So there was a win-win kind of the deal that Indians were the main one that they convinced U.S. policymakers for that. The same that India did a few years ago for Chabahar project in the first Trump administration, that I'm very much concerned about what would happen in the second administration of Trump. Let's be hopeful that India, with regards to the good relationship between President Putin and Trump, also with cooperation of Russia, could provide such an opportunity for INSTC as a whole
Right.
corridor and Chabahar as a gateway to be exempted from the unilateral sanctions from US.
So you've come to Raisina. Have you come to India before this?
Yes, it's not the first time that I'm in Raisina, and it's not the first time that I'm in Indian think tanks conferences. I've been there several times before, and it's a sign of a very good relationship because I'm not representing Foreign Office, but as an independent think tank, I have been invited here several times by our Indian colleagues, and I think it's a sign of first, Indian growing power, as a growing power, particularly with regards to Indian very much good effort to provide a kind of the soft power proportional to its economic power, and also good relationship between India and Iran, that always Iranian representatives, not only from Foreign Office, even from the independent institutions are attending the Indian conferences.
Sir, if I can ask another question, which is to do with the sanctions.
Yeah.
How badly have the sanctions impacted Iran in terms of, the common man?
Actually, I'm not expert in sanction studies, but generally speaking,
But you
Yeah.
live in Tehran, right?
yes, of course.
So how badly has it impacted you?
Sanctions mainly has been targeted to impact infrastructures and very important industries in Iran, like oil industry. Rather than, yes, it takes time to have some consequences on the daily life of the ordinary citizens. So I would say the most important bad consequences of the sanctions in Iran could be seen or could be evident in many important industries like oil industry, and also you could have reflection on the exchange rate, the Iranian money exchange rate in comparison to the international currencies. So at the same time, after more than a decade of being sanctioned, it has some consequences for daily life of the ordinary people. But at the same time, Iranians have been well prepared or well adapted to the sanctions. I remember in the first years of the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, Russian colleagues, they were coming to Iran very much desperate because they didn't know how to deal with the sanctions, and they were very much keen to learn from Iranian experiences, because Iranians has lived with the sanction for more than 4 decades.
Right.
So I'm not saying that sanction doesn't have effect. Sanctions, of course, sanctions has very bad negative consequences for Iranian economy and infrastructure. But at the same time, Iranian society and Iranian people have been much more resilient and, as I said, more adapted to the sanctions, not as vulnerable as others, like what happened for Russia. Again, I would admire Russians because they became very much quickly adapted how to deal with the sanctions. But I could imagine that if such a sanctions that has affected, has imposed on Iran or Russia, for other countries, it would be huge collapse for their economy. Yeah.
So the last question, I know you're in a hurry and you have a lot of people to meet here. Do you see the Trump White House, the second Trump White House, as an opportunity or a threat, the way you see it?
I think it's both opportunity and challenge, of course. The most important things with regards to Trump is unpredictability. So whilst Iran-US relationship has been always challenging, and so Iran-US relationship has been fundamentally challenging for several decades. So Trump's won't be something substantially different from that. But at the same time, there are huge opportunities because of Trump's we call non-conventional approach, and he's a kind of the anti-establishment sentiment. So if Trump is going to be someone that to some extent reverse the conventional patterns in US, very much interventionist and aggressive policies, to what is called isolationist and non-interventionist policies, it would be a lot of hope. But to be honest, in reality, the Trump's camps has been divided and polarized in two different camps. We call it, I have called it even in Indian TVs before, in previous interviews, Israel first camp, that are traditional neocon, aggressive warmongers, that they are to some extent majority still in Trump's cabinet. And someone like the lady that came today here,
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yes, Tulsi Gabbard. That she is known as being anti-war, someone very much less interventionist, less aggressive, and someone committed to the idea of America first, argument of the Trump's presidential campaign. There would be an internal challenge in Trump's camps, and particularly with Trump's, I think, kind of the introduction of himself as a peace president, not a war president.
Right.
So let's see what would happen. But as I said, traditionally, U.S. establishment and U.S. policies has been always hostile against Iran, and has been very much prioritized Israeli interests over American interests. Something that Trump has tried to reverse it, at least in language or in rhetoric, and that's what would happen on practice.
So what I'm hearing, sir, is that economically India should step up to the plate and try and do more business with Iran.
Yeah.
And B, you're hopeful that perhaps Trump might become transactional and say, you get off the nuclear weapons thing and I'll ease some of the sanctions and we can try and be friends. That's a possibility.
Yeah, of course, economic-wise and from the trade point of view, it is huge opportunities and it's very much necessary and needed. But let's me to also emphasize on society-to-society interactions. Whilst Iran and India has been generationally connected to each other, what the new reality, the emerging reality is that the new generations, particularly new academic generation that I'm coming from, since the modern universities established in Iran at least, most of them, they have been always West-oriented and West-inspired. So there are a lot of lack between new generation, younger generation of Iranian and Indians. They don't know each other very well. They are very much going to the West, talking to the West. They are studying in the West, and they are looking for jobs or opportunities in the West. Whilst everyone knows that there is a shift in international order towards the East, and the rising power like China and India, whilst they are not very good together, But from Iranian point of view, both are very important, and we need to approach them and to particularly to fill the generational gap that has happened after several centuries of very good connections. We need to have short tourist interaction, cultural exchanges, academic fellowship or visiting opportunities, and also something that I'm very much keen to do that, and I have been here several times for do that, is think tank dialogue. We call it intellectual diplomacy. It's something very much needed between Iran and India.
With that, sir, I'm afraid we'll have to call this interview to an end. Thank you so very much. Let's just hope things get better.
That's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.